What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm going to be bringing you the Season 2, Episode 12 review of The Walking Dead entitled Better Angels. Wow. Wow. First, let me say this. I'm on spring break all this week, so definitely happy about that. And obviously, I'm very excited because I just got finished watching this latest episode of The Walking Dead, and oh my goodness, a lot of things to say in this review, a lot of things to say. First, spoiler warning. That's the first thing. Gotta let you know right off the bat that if you have not watched this episode, episode 12, entitled Better Angels, if you go ahead and watch this review, you will be spoiled. Now, I'm going to do it like I did it the last time, where I'll get to the point where I'm about to, go off into spoiler territory, and I'll let you know when that is. So you will be able to at least watch a certain amount of this episode review. But I'm letting you know right now that you will be spoiled if you watch this entire video before you watch the actual episode. So that's the first thing I have to get out the way right off the bat. Second thing, this episode was very sloppy. I'm just gonna come out right out and say it. The writing in this episode was very sloppy. It was exciting. It was very exciting, but it was just sloppy, and I'll get into that later on in the review. But before I get into the review, my summary and analysis of the episode, two things you have to be mindful of. Two things. And they both refer to my previous episode review, which was episode 10, entitled 18 Miles Out. And I said two things in that episode review. The first thing I said was I felt a little bit ambivalent about the apparent resolution between Rick and Shane. I said that in that episode. And it looks like, it's going to be borne out. It's definitely going to be borne out with, the latest episode, or not will be. It was borne out with the last episode. That's the first thing to keep in mind about that previous episode review. The second thing is I said this, and you can go back and watch the review. I said this. I said Rick should have left Shane on that goddamn bus. I said that. I said if that was me, I'd have just left the nigga on the bus. Why be bothered with him? Obviously, more trouble than he's worth. Just leave him on the bus. I said that. If I was Rick, I would have left Shane on the bus and called it a day. But hey. So now let me get into right into this episode review. This time, like I've been doing for the last couple of episode reviews, I believe, I'm going to just combine the summary and the analysis all into one. And basically, this episode deals with one overarching narrative, so one major plot. So the group is dealing with the aftermath of Dale's death. And they're having the funeral, the memorial, or whatever. And Rick has gone and decided that he will actually go on and release Randall, give him some provisions that'll last him a couple of days, and just send him on his merry way. But this is obviously problematic, and it's problematic because the group, and this is especially true in the case of Rick, they seem to be confusing Dale's death with releasing Randall. In other words, they feel like that by releasing Randall, they're somehow honoring the memory of Dale, or somehow honoring his life. But one has nothing to do with the other. I mean, Dale's dead; he's gone. Releasing Randall won't change that fact, and it has nothing to do with, I mean, once a person's dead, they're pretty much dead, right? I mean, there's no coming back. You're dead. There's no more consciousness. There's no way you can be honored once you're dead. You are dead. It has nothing to do with you if you're dead. I mean, that's it. That's the end of the story. And so they seem to be under the impression that now that they're somehow ethically obligated to release Randall in order to honor, um, Dale's life. But that's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. If you release Randall, then you run the very serious risk of having him bring back people to the farm that will engage in violence against you and will potentially kill all of you. It's that simple. It's a simple cost benefit analysis. And at this point, I think that the group is so psychologically confused and just so absolutely traumatized by the experience of having to live through this zombie apocalypse that they have just lost their ability to engage in any sort of critical thought and to be rational about, practically anything. And I think, Daryl was right. I mean, when Daryl told Dale, and I believe it was the last episode, that the group is broken, he was prophetic in more than one way. I'll tell you that. All right, so everybody is preparing to move into Herschel's house. Finally, Herschel, the fake Christian, allows these people to not just stay out there in the wild next to a forest filled with zombies, but he actually allows them to come into the house. Um, uh, Obviously, I think, I'm speculating here, probably because, winter is approaching, I think, and, he wouldn't, leave him out there, at least, just, leave him out there in the cold in the middle of winter. So while everybody is doing this, moving into Herschel's house, Rick and Daryl, are preparing to, go and release, Randall. And Rick obviously doesn't want Shane to go. He really doesn't trust Shane. I mean, it's obvious at this point. At one point, he even tells Andrea to keep an eye on Shane, make sure he doesn't do anything too crazy while I'm not here. That was basically the implication. Um, so in the midst of all of this, there are several scenes cut into the narrative that show Randall about to escape from his handcuffs, although that won't really do any good for him, seeing as how the shed is locked from the outside, and he wouldn't be able to get out anyway, even if he escaped from the cuffs. But Shane slips into the shed while no one is watching, and he sort of sits down on a stool and confronts Randall. He doesn't say anything to him, however, but it's clear that he's contemplating killing Randall. He whips out his gun. At one point he stands up and points the gun at Randall, but then it looks like he has a change of heart, and um, he and it looks like he's gonna have a change of heart. So basically what happens is that Shane helps Randall escape from the shed. And when he does this, mm, I'm thinking, first of all, this doesn't look too good, but second of all, yeah, I wonder what Shane has up his sleeve. So he helps Randall escape. They go into the woods, and he breaks Randall's neck. But before Shane kills Randall, and this is something that I found just very interesting. Um, It's clear to me that Randall would have led his group back to the farm. Would have led them right back to the farm. At one point, Randall and Shane engage in a conversation, and he tells Shane, I don't know exactly, where the group is now, but I know where a previous campsite was, and I'll take you there. And it's clear to me that if, Daryl and Rick would have released Randall, that he would have went right back to that campsite, that there was a very real possibility that he would have run into his group, and there's a very real possibility that he would have brought that group right back to the farm. And Randall also said something else that's very interesting. Before Shane breaks his neck and kills him, Randall says, they're really good guys. They're kind of crazy, but they're tough, and they're really good guys. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? I mean, are we talking about the same people who have, members in that group who raped two teenage girls and made the father watch while they did it? Are we talking about those people? Those are the people he claims are, really good people? Really? I mean, so it's clear to me that in this particular instance, Shane did, the absolutely right thing by, killing Randall. So, yet again, Shane was proven to be right. That his reasoning, wasn't just because, he's some crazy or sociopath or psychopath. But anyway, Shane kills Randall. And after he kills Randall, he does something else that's very interesting. he slams his face onto a tree. And I mean, this is the part where you have to say, if there were any doubts about the fact that Shane was out of his fucking mind, then you have to be confirmed that, at this point, he slams his face into a tree, obviously preparing for some sort of setup. And so he, goes back to the camp, and he starts manipulating everybody. He tells the group, Randall attacked me, and he jumped me, he hit me with a rock, and he escaped, and he found his way into the woods, and he took my gun. Shit's getting hot, ladies and gentlemen. So Shane and Rick go off on, one path to try and find out, Randall, who's we all know is dead. And Daryl and Glenn, take another path to try and find, Randall under, the fake pretenses offered to them by Shane. So Daryl and Glenn are, in the woods. They're, supposedly they're, hunting who they think is Randall. And Daryl starts to, well, by this time it's dark, and so they're still, tracking Randall into the night. And Daryl starts to realize that, Shane's story is not making any sense. He points out that there are two sets of tracks. He points out that the tracks seem to be, walking in tandem. And, it's just, he finds this very suspicious. Right while they're in the middle of this, they get attacked. Both Daryl and Glenn get attacked by a walker. Now, this is the spoiler warning. Sorry, if this is the part where you will be spoiled. If you are an attentive watcher, you probably would have figured out what the spoiler is by now. But if you're not, and you're not too sure about how attentive you were when watching these last couple of episodes, then you might want to turn this review off, go watch the episode, and then come back and finish watching the review. But just to let you know, this is the spoiler part. Come to find out, the walker that they've been attacked by is Randall. Uh-oh. Then Daryl notices something odd. He lifts up, after they, kill, Randall, lifts up his shirt, looking at his neck, looking at his face. There's no bite marks. And then Daryl's like, I mean, he obviously died of a broken neck. He didn't die of, being, bitten by a zombie or whatever. But then no bite marks, and yet he somehow became a walker. Not looking good for the group, ladies and gentlemen. Not looking good for the group. So meanwhile, Rick and Shane are together, and, Shane is still kind of leading Rick on, under false pretenses. And then Rick starts questioning Shane. He too becomes suspicious. He's like, oh, so, Randall hit you with a rock, you say? He took your gun and he ran off in this direction? That's what you're saying? Stuff like that. So at this point, we all know what's about to happen, right? We all know it's about to go down. Rick asking Shane those questions kinds of, let Shane know that he knows that, the gig is pretty much up at this point. So they kind of get into a clearing. Shane, leads him into a clearing, and Shane pulls a gun on Rick. And again, if there was ever any doubts about the fact that Shane is now just going completely crazy, this should dispel all doubts. So Shane pulls his gun. He wants to kill Rick. I'm going to be with Lori. I'm going to be Carl's father. Why did you have to come back and mess everything up? And, yada, 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 yada. Basically crying like a little bitch. So, Rick tries to reason with Shane. This is the part I understand. He holsters his gun. His only form of protection against Shane. He holsters his gun and then tries to reason with Shane. And then at one point, Shane's got the gun pointed at, Rick, but he holsters his gun. Shane puts his gun away. And Rick, could have shot him here. We know, Rick's pretty quick on the draw. He could have easily pop, 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 end the story. But he doesn't do that. And I'm thinking maybe, he thinks that the sound would have attracted the walkers. I don't know. But they engage in more back and forth conversation. Shane's continuing to spiral into his delusions, and Rick is continually trying to reason with Shane, and then Shane pulls his gun again, and he's like, you know what, basically f this, Rick, pull your gun. And then Rick tells him, no, I'm not pulling my gun. You have to shoot me unarmed. And then he's telling Shane, I know you wouldn't do this. I know you understand this is murder. I know you understand that shooting me unarmed is wrong. And basically, Rick is, rocking Shane to sleep, as we say. That's slang for, he's basically trying to, talk Shane down, try and get Shane to loosen, to let down his guard, so he can establish an opportunity when he can strike. So Rick pulls his gun out of his holster by his pinky, and he's taught, look, I'm not a threat. He's trying to talk Shane down, and Shane is he's stepping closer and closer to Shane, and then finally Shane starts lowering his gun, and right as he does, Rick reaches behind himself. Well, he already had his hand behind his back, pulls out a knife, stabs Shane in the heart, stabs him right in the chest, right in the heart. And so Shane goes down. And Shane is he killed Shane basically. He bleeds out, stabbed him right in the heart, I think. So now let me pause this review. Let me pause right here, and let me explain to you. I have to give you some other context that's happened in the episode in order for you to understand why I think that the writing was just absolutely sloppy in this episode. So I'm going to pause right here, and I'm going to go to another point earlier in the episode. So earlier in the episode, Carl goes to Shane. He tells him, he says, I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to tell my parents. And so, Shane tells him, all right, you can tell me. And then Carl tells him about the walker and about how he feels that, Dale's death was, his fault. And he also tells Shane about the gun that he stole from Daryl. And then Carl tells Shane this, and he hands Shane the gun that he stole from Daryl. And Shane, talks to Carl, and he tries to give Carl the gun back. And even before Shane did this, I was thinking, maybe Shane should give Carl the gun back for self-defense. But I was like, well, then again, it's freaking Carl. I mean, who's shown himself to be immature and absolutely irresponsible on numerous occasions. So hell no, he shouldn't give, Carl the gun back. But thankfully, I think Carl doesn't, he doesn't take the gun back. But then Shane goes to Rick, and he tells Rick about what happened, the conversation that he had with Carl, and some other stuff happens here, but it's not important for the review of this episode, so I won't go into that. But basically, Shane gives Rick the gun back, and he tells Rick that he needs to talk to Carl. And so Rick goes and talks to Carl, and he basically explains, I wish you could grow up and have the type of childhood that I had, but it's obvious that won't happen. There will come a point in time where, I will die, where your mother will die, and you will need to know how to protect yourself. And basically, he has a father-son talk with Carl. And so Rick, gives Carl the gun back, for self-defense. So now let me go back to where I left off with Shane, with Rick stabbing and killing Shane. So he turns around after, he stabbed Shane in the heart and killed him. Rick stands up, first, he cries and, everything and whatever. And he turns around, and guess who's there? If you guess Carl, ding, 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 ding. Yes. Somehow Carl is there. And I'm just like, what the hell, man? Come on. Why is he there? I mean, does Lori just not know how to take care of her goddamn children? Honestly. I mean, in the middle of the freaking night, and somehow he's gone, and Lori doesn't know where the hell Carl is. I mean, what is going on here? But anyway, Carl, is there, and he's pointing a gun at Rick. And Rick is like, well, it's not what you think. Let me try to explain what happened here. And then the audience gets to see Shane start to reanimate. Now, we know for a fact that Shane has never been bitten. We know that for a fact that he's never been bitten. And yet here he is reanimating behind Rick. Holy shit. I mean, yeah. Before I even, address that, let me continue on with this narrative. So Carl, obviously sees Shane reanimated behind Rick, but Rick, doesn't see this, so he thinks that Carl is just pointing the gun at him and is about to shoot him. But no, Carl shoots the reanimated Shane in the head, kills him. Now, the reason why this writing is just absolutely poor, piss poor, and sloppy in this episode is because how many times is Carl going to have to play the role of the Deux Ex Machina? It's really, really freaking annoying. This is 2 episodes in a row that Carl just mysteriously shows up at the most opportune time in order to resolve some difficulty in the plot. It's a classic Deux Ex Machina, and it just shows absolutely horrendous and sloppy writing. It's silly, and it's a silly and ridiculous contrived plot device. Absolutely silly. So basically, what we have confirmed here, besides the sloppy writing in this episode, it is now confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. It is now confirmed. You do not have to be bitten by a walker in order to reanimate. Now, I don't know what the preconditions for being reanimated are, but I can almost guarantee that it has something to do with handling the bodies, the infected, dead bodies of the walkers. And it now looks like that everybody who dies in that group is now going to have to be reanimated. I don't know. This is just my speculation here. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't read the comics, so I can't be 100% sure. But it looks like Andrea, T-Dog, um, Glenn, everybody who was handling those infected, dead walker bodies, looks like they're now going to be reanimated. And it just went from bad to worse. I mean, damn. Could it have gotten any worse? They're already in the middle of a zombie apocalypse on the only safe haven that they know of, a farm that just happens to be surrounded by a freaking forest full of walkers. Now they find out that you don't even have to be bitten by a walker in order to be reanimated. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What else have we learned in this episode? Well, we learned that Rick is stupid. Just absolutely freaking. I mean, he has to be retarded. Absolutely retarded. Like I said from in my a couple of episode reviews ago, he should have left Shane on the freaking bus. I said this. Said he should have just left him. He's more trouble than he's worth. What else do we know? We now know that Shane was freaking crazy. And just as a postscript to this episode review, let me just say this about Shane. I'm actually happy Shane is dead because it finally resolves that whole subplot. But let me say this: everything that Shane did was reasonable, and I have shown on multiple occasions how Shane was right in handling the situations. It was absolutely reasonable what his thinking was. But the way he went about expressing himself just absolutely showed you that this guy was psychologically unstable. Now, I don't think he was, I've called him crazy and delusional. I think he was delusional, although I don't think he was, crazy. I think he was, psychologically unstable, but I don't think he was a sociopath or a psychopath. Obviously don't agree with that. But what I was objecting to when I was sort of defending Shane, I was objecting to the argument that anybody who had Shane's beliefs were necessarily crazy. I mean, that's not true. Like I said before, Shane has been proven right on numerous occasions. And even now, I think they should have killed Randall. And even now, I agree with almost every decision that Shane ever made. So what I was trying to do was to play devil's advocate to sort of get people off of this idea that anybody who believed the way Shane believed was just crazy or sociopathic or just psychopathic. It's obviously not true. And I even, commented, wrote in the comments of one of my episode reviews that, yeah, Shane, the problem with Shane is that he's hot-headed. He's impulsive. He's not prudent. And he's, turns out that he was just devolving more and more into this psychological instability and these sort of delusional fantasies about what would happen once and if Rick was, somehow mysteriously removed from the picture. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The group is toast now. It looks like they'll be toast. I won't spoil the very, very end of the episode, but it's not looking good for these guys at all. They don't have Shane, who I believe was the only voice of reason, even though, yes, he was psychologically unstable. Dale obviously wasn't the right way to go. I mean, like I said, Dale just believed that this was somehow Candyland, and that if you just believed in this notion of civilization enough, that everything would just be okay. Doesn't work like that. And, now that Shane is dead, who I believe was the only voice of reason, and now that we see that, people can be reanimated without having to be bitten by walkers, looks like the group is pretty much toast. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the writers, what creative direction the writers decide to go in now that this Shane versus Rick subplot has been resolved. And now that we see that, the shit has just gone from bad to worse. Hopefully the next episode will be better writing. I want them, to continue this level of, excitement in the writing, but Jesus, please, no more Carl do Ex Machinists. They're better writers than this. It's proven by the fact that they've gone, what is this, 11, 10 episodes with just excellent, fantastic writing. They don't have to resort to this silly Carl, contrived plot device. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.